Hey guys, Angie here again today. I am going to be sharing the Ogryn builds that I think are going to be the best going into the new patch today. But before I get started, I need to have a little bit of a conversation. I hope you don't mind me doing this on camera. Um, Ogryn, can you come in here for a second?
Yes, what is it, sir?
Um, so why don't you go ahead and have a seat, Ogryn?
All right then.
Yeah, so Ogryn, I know times have been tough for you, what with you being ranked as my worst class and it just being difficult to play Ogryn sometimes. Um, unfortunately, I don't think things are getting a whole lot better with this new patch.
Really? Ogrins didn't get much?
No, I'm sorry, Ogryn. They gave you like one new talent, and you don't get to play with any of the new weapons, and you even got some nerfs.
Oh. Well, Ogren's sad.
I know, Ogryn. It's tough times to be one of you these days. But hey, chin up. I did put together some builds. That kind of brings me to my second point here, which is I I could only really come up with 3 builds that were functionally different at all for you guys. I hope that's okay.
Oh, well, that's all right, sir. 3 builds is plenty. I can barely count to 3.
Good, Ogryn. I'm glad you keep a positive attitude. And hey, I appreciate you. You know, you're great at blocking all the bullets that would otherwise hit the targets I'm trying to shoot at. Right. Have a good day, Ogryn. You can see yourself out.
All right then, sir.
Hey guys, sorry about that. A little bit of a awkward conversation to have, but it's the truth. I think Ogryn is in a bit of a difficult spot because a lot of his builds devolve into the same thing. There's a lot of weapons you can bring for specifically one of these builds that, especially if you go and look them up on one of the websites that you can see user submitted builds, they almost all end up using the exact same talents. I think there is a severe lack in diversity in the talents that Ogryns can actually bring. There are some talents that are just so much better than others, and really there's just not a whole lot of choice available in the talent trees. That isn't to say that Ogryn isn't very capable of clearing the highest level of content. It's just not as diverse as other classes are, where I could easily make 5 builds. I could have made even more, especially for veteran, and Psyker will follow the same suit. Ogryn really only has 3 distinct builds that I could, in all good faith, call builds. I did not want to produce 5 builds and have 3 of them just be the same talents, more or less, with 3 different weapons. So the 3 we're going to be going over today are a tank build, a Bruiser build, the heaviest melee damage possible build, and a range build. I will give you my ranking for each of these. I do not think that they are all created equally. I will be actually giving letter rankings, so this will be a tier list, but of only 3 things. So, I don't think we're not comparing against much here. However, let's go ahead and get started. So the first build here, I'm sure you can guess from looking at it, is the tank build. Now, I have not bothered to roll a good slab shield for myself, and like I was saying before, there isn't a whole lot of diversity to Ogryn weaponry, but there are a couple different choices for what sort of like shield and club you want to use, depending on which swing pattern you like the best. The one mandatory blessing that you must have when you are making one of these shields is, I'll show it to you right here, is this talent right here, Skull Crusher, which gives enemies 40% extra damage taken if they're already staggered. So basically, we're trying to stagger as many enemies as possible by shoving them, by bashing them with the charged attack of the shield, just getting them staggered so that we can either finish up and kill them, or our allies can finish up and kill them. And since we're playing as a tank, we don't expect to do the most damage in the world, but we're going to do pretty decent damage with us. As far as a secondary, I think that's, or a range weapon, I think the good range weapon to have with this build would be the kickback. The kickback is going to allow us to deal with pesky specials and stuff like that, and even some more dangerous targets that maybe, you know, you've got some maniacs you want to deal with rather than just blocking them all day. The shield is just a really, really great weapon, especially when you're supporting your team with the middle talents here. So you can see at the top of the tree, we do take a lot of these talents just because when we're hitting one enemy or multiple enemies, we want both of these to give us toughness depending on the strong attack we hit them with. We are also getting this toughness replenishment while in coherency increased by 50%, so we get a lot of toughness back, and we end up going all the way out to the sides here to pick up both these toughness nodes, just because there's really not, as I was saying before, there's really not a whole lot of other talent nodes that are worth, you know, traveling down to the tree to invest in. There are a select few that are actually really any good. We are taking both of these, impact bonus on melee attacks and soften them up, because, I mean, who doesn't love to stagger enemies more and make them take 15% more damage? This 15% more damage enemies take will stack with the 40% from the blessing on our weapons, so we're at 55% here, and it will also stack with this 25% base damage when we have them taunted using our loyal protector. So enemies that are taunted by us and then staggered by us are taking a stupid amount of damage, and we're actually really able to be a big use to our team like this. This taunt ability just kind of breaks the game in a lot of ways, especially when you don't take any damage because you can block everything. You know, having a bunch of like squishy allies that can just get work done without having to worry about getting attacked by any of the enemies in the room is really, really nice. So it can pull you out of some sticky situations. No one ever complained about having a loyal protector on the team. Then we're going to take both Crunch and Batter because we love to inflict those bleeds. There's a lot of classes that benefit from having bleeds, like Zealots benefit from having an enemy already be bleeding so they can get crit stacks up. And then Crunch is just an insane single passive point because we're almost always going to fully charge our melee attack, especially with the shield. So extra impact and that much extra damage is nuts. Coming down the middle here, we are going to take Attention Seeker, which means we can taunt at enemies even when we don't have our ultimate ability up, which is really, really nice to be able to pull crushers and things like that away from vulnerable allies. And then we're going to come down the right side here and take Get Stuck In, just because this will allow allies to cohere around us better and provide them more support, and it's also better alternative than payback time because we don't really plan on being hit by many melee attacks. We're going to be blocking and shoving too much for that. Bruiser is getting a slight nerf to 4%, but it's the better of the two talents either way. And then No Pushover is the single really unique thing that's happening to this whole build. No Pushover is being converted from its current form of blocking and attack reducing push cost into this form right here. Your pushes have 250% stagger once every 8 seconds. So this will, with that much stagger, I think that pretty much just allows you to shove a crusher down on his face on the ground. Like that's an insane amount of stagger. To be able to do, and that's really nice because like the push radius on the shield is really big too. It hits a lot of enemies in front of you, so you'll be able to CC them for a long time. And then we're taking this last set of talents down here because we're going to be pushing enemies a lot with this to disrupt them, which gives us stacks back, and Feel No Pain gives us damage reduction and toughness replenishment. And if they do finally break through our Feel No Pain, we are going to push even more enemies back. So we're just a big ass disruptor. We're breaking enemies' AI and making them focus on us. We're shoving them to the ground. We're beating them upside the head. We're just keeping them softened up, and we're providing extra damage for our team in doing so. I rank this build solidly, For an Ogryn, I rank this in the A category. Compared to other classes or other playable characters, I don't think it's as potent as some things in Zealot and Psyker and stuff, but it is very good for Ogryn. It's good if you're gonna have an Ogryn on your team. I like this sort of Ogryn. However, it pales in comparison to what I would say is my favorite. Let's go to this. What I would say is my favorite Ogryn build, and the one that I would rank as an S tier build, and that is this Bruiser build. So you can choose whatever one of these bully clubs you want, but I think that using a bully club is essential. I am a full supporter of the Mark 1 bully club being the strongest of the 3, or however many there are. And what you will definitely want for one of the blessings here is Thrust, tier 4 Thrust, because that's going to stack 60% power if we fully charge this attack. And we're going to try to do that every time. This is a heavy attack build. For the secondary, I really like the Rumbler, because since we can't disrupt enemies as readily as we can with the shield, we can use the Rumbler to pick specials and stuff at range, but also it can be used to blow away enemies and stuff so we can get a res or clear some breathing room. These grenades, like having that many grenades, is very, very useful to yourself and the team. This build focuses on the same set of toughness regenerating talents up in this top left corner, but we come down this way specifically because we can take Soften Them Up and deal more damage. If anything takes more than one hit, we're going to be doing 15% more to it. Then we're coming through Indomitable and going all the way out here to Trample, because this means that when we rush through a bunch of enemies, we're going to turn around and kill them all in a matter of seconds, because we're going to have so much crazy base damage, up to 50% base damage if you get a good charge. And just for some quick maths, 50% base damage on a weapon that does 330 on a heavy attack is really, really nice. And that's base damage. So keep that in mind, because it does get scaled by things like Crunch when we're fully charging a melee attack, and Thrust, which is... So if you have Crunch and Thrust, you're dealing double damage. You're dealing plus 100% power on a fully charged melee attack, and that is multiplicative with the base damage. So your base damage would go to 660, and then that would be doubled before it hits the enemy. So really, really high damage with this. We're also inflicting bleeds, because bleeds scale based on the damage of the hit that inflicted them. So these hits, I mean, you're going to bleed enemies out pretty good with this. It's also nice because since we swing so slow, sometimes you'll almost kill an enemy, and oftentimes the bleed will get them on the back end. We'll take this heavy attack efficiency or heavy attack damage for you and allies, and then all this stuff down here is just more melee damage, more charge, and then finally even more heavy attack damage stacking up down here, replenishing more from melee attack kills. So, replenishing 10 instead of 5% when you have it fully stacked, and extra attack speed for faster heavy attacks. I do not take Brutish Momentum because with this build, I almost never use light attacks because they are so ineffectual comparatively. So you can see here, they do less than half of the damage that a heavy attack does. They are quicker, but we don't get any of these nice benefits like, guaranteed insta-killing these enemies for smash them and stuff, and we don't get Crunch, and we don't get Thrust factored in. So we're almost always sticking with heavy attacks because it's better to do a single heavy attack than 2 light attacks in most cases. And then Get Stuck In is really important for this build, because since we're using our charge, we will be going deep into enemy lines, and this will allow our allies to follow us. So if you have things like Zealots on your team who they need to get into the fray too, this will allow them to follow along because they get 20% movement speed and they can't be stunned for 4 seconds. Really, really nice. And then Bruiser, just because it's such a solid talent, it's another reason why it's seeing a nerf, is it does give you combat reduction, and that's just powerful if you can get it on any class. So this is my pick for an S tier class for the Ogryn. I think it is the Ogryn's singular strongest build. The numbers that you will put down with this build are really, really huge. Now, this is the build that when I was deciding, how many builds should I make or present for the Ogryn, this is the one where I realized pretty much all of the Ogryn builds that you could really make for most weapons where you're attempting to do melee damage are going to follow more or less this tree. You might change one talent, but it doesn't make a great difference. The other weapons that are really, really viable with this talent tree are the new pickaxes. Pick your favorite there. There are tons of blessings on those pickaxes that increases their damage to absurd levels, so those are really good. Like I said before, you could use any of the clubs. I've even seen this build used with the knives, like those combat knives that the Ogryn has. Pretty much everything excepting the shield, because why would you don't want to take a shield if you're doing damage. Oh, and the shovel, the new shovel as well. All these shovels are pretty decent. I don't know how I feel about the power maul in this. I think it loses a little bit of damage just because it's the power maul, and I just don't really enjoy playing with it too much because it's so slow and weird to make yourself vulnerable like the shock attack does. But really just about any weapon can slot into this build just because the stat buffs from some of these heavy attack buffs, the keystone, and from this crunch right here are just so nuts. I think this is the preeminent melee build for Ogryn. And there's just one more build that I want to share with you guys, and it's the range build. I'm certain we've all seen it before. I've certainly played it before. Now, this is what I would consider a B tier build. I say that because it does have some significant problems that hold it back from being able to solo carry. If you wanted to solo carry, I would run that last build. Because you can just run over every enemy in the game and you can beat them to death. You can beat bosses to death. You're not going to die. However, with the gunner build, it is very fun, but I would rank it more like of meme status. It does sort of struggle when you are getting overwhelmed with melee enemies at close range, because your melee does not do anywhere near as much as it does with all of those lovely melee-based buffs over here. Your range damage, however, is absurd. You can melt bosses in matters of seconds, which is really, really nice. You're great at dealing with big hordes, and this talent tree is seeing a few buffs. I'll show them to you now. So specifically, we are getting Reloaded and Ready is getting a 3% range damage buff and a 2-second duration buff. It's right here. So that'll last even longer. Now this does apply, as far as I know, to when we automatically reload our weapon using our ultimate. So we will get an additional 15% range damage for 8 seconds with that ultimate ability there. We will also be getting a buff to Massacre of 6-second duration instead of 10-second duration instead of 6, which is going to allow us to stack that 8% critical chance much easier and more consistently. This is really actually an important talent for us because there's not a whole lot of other ways to get crit, and crit is very important for keeping our weapon firing and keeping our ammo economy good. And then I think there's one more buff for this, right? We have Steady Grip, which is going to regenerate between 3 and 5% toughness regeneration, or sorry, from 3% toughness regeneration per second to 5. So that's very nice. Having toughness regen is going to cancel out some of the fact that we are going to get nicked by enemy shooters while we're doing this, while we're just firing. And then the biggest buff of all is that this talent right here, Thick of the Fray, is being wrapped into the Ogryn gunner ability. So you won't have to pick this ability, which is great because you basically never can pick it because Light 'em Up is just so oppressively good at dealing damage because the burn stacks go to insane levels of DPS. So now all of these gunner builds are going to have less movement speed penalties when braced and gain 15% close range damage. So this is really nice quality of life to this ability, which I thought before was probably my worst ranked ability on Ogryn, and it's bringing it up a little bit closer to par, so it's seen a nice buff there. However, let's address the sort of problems that I see with the build, the reason why I would still rank it B tier instead of a solid A or S. It does rely on having a lot of ammo available to you. Even with the free shots from Lucky Bullet, it never seems to be quite enough. you will still routinely run out of ammo, and it just kind of has limited viability in a lot of games. Like if you end up playing a game where there just ends up being a lot of carapace armor, it doesn't have as great an effect on crushers and maulers as one might think. It does really well against bosses and flak armored targets and softer targets, but so does a lot of other stuff. I just don't think it really shines in many areas outside of murdering hordes that are funneling right at you and killing bosses. So it is a fun build to play. It feels really good to open fire and absolutely do some insane DPS with this gun. Your damage numbers will be very big. However, you struggle in toe-to-toe engagements. You know, if you are attacked by 3 crushers, you're actually going to have a tough time dealing with them. You'll stack the burns on them, but they won't die nearly as quickly as if you swap to this build and you can kill a crusher in 2 hits. 2 charged heavy attacks at the head will kill a crusher with this thing. So it kind of has a specific use case, and you want to make sure that your team has enough like frontline without you. If everyone's running range builds, you're going to be fighting for ammo, and I think your environment for what your role is on the team is going to be more limited. So that is my only real downside to the gunner. It is very fun. It's getting a lot of nice buffs. I think it's going to be more quality lifey, but I still don't rank it as highly as those other 2. So there you go, guys. That is 3 Ogryn builds. My hope for Ogryn in this coming, last few months of the year, maybe into 2020, what's the next year going to be called? 2025? What will they come up with next? It may be into 2025. They will do a revamp of the Ogryn tree, or I hope to the Fat Shark Gods that they introduce more weapons for Ogryn. I really want Ogryn to be good because it is a fun class. It's a fun fantasy. I love being as big or bigger than all of the enemies and just absolutely crushing them. I think the pickaxes are a good look in the right direction, but we need more and more diversity of builds. Because right now it is very linear what you will choose if you want to do one of the 3 builds. And that is my 2 cents on Ogryn on the back end of this video as well. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in a few days' time. I'm going to release a couple other videos before I get to the Psyker build. I'm intending to put the Psyker build out the day of the update because I want to show those new trees since the Psyker is getting a full tree rework. It would be insane to try to attempt it without that. Yeah, alright guys, I'll see you next time, and thanks very much for watching. Like and subscribe. Bye.